On today's Locked On Senators, the season has come and gone, and now the real work begins.
And there's a lot of work to be done, Ross, so we narrowed it down to 5 top priorities for Steve Staios this summer.
Let's get into the list, some heated debates, and more on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 1026 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Sports, concerts, and more. Visit Game Time. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first ticketing purchase. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where we say a big hello and let you know that a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today is Wednesday, April 17th, and Pilsy, the body isn't even cold yet, and fans are already speculating about what kind of moves the Sens need to make to be competitive as soon as the puck drops next year.
Yeah, I mean, Ross, this team needed to do work on this body that is the Ottawa Senators franchise while they were still warm, maybe even in infancy. This team needed work at the start of this season. So, look, I don't blame fans for being like, okay, that season was trash. They better do something right now to change it all around. But these things are going to take time, and there's the calendar that will flow in the offseason. There's going to be major things for Steve Staios to do at each one of those deadline stops.
But until the first, he just has to sit back and watch and scout, do pro scouting for guys who are going to be free agents. The playoffs was when big game players come to life. Heck, last year's Conn Smythe winner is a pending unrestricted free agent this summer. How much gas does Jonathan Marchessault have in the tank? But other than that, he's going to have to wait until 48 hours after the Stanley Cup final before the first buyout window opens. I start to you our off-season conversation with a very simple question, Pilsy. Will the Senators utilize a buyout or two after instantly getting rid of 3 names that have been on the books for the last couple of years?
Ross, I would be shocked if we don't see at least one buyout. Honestly, I kind of feel like we might see 2. Like it wouldn't be that surprising to have multiple buyouts here, but I think for sure the Senators are going to utilize at least one buyout.
Well, where are you going with the other? Are you thinking maybe both goalies? Because the only thing I see is a goaltender, maybe both getting bought out. And I mean, very slightly on 2. I think one goalie likely won't be back. And if it can't be via trade, it will be through a buyout. So Staios will have a good idea of the market by the end of the Stanley Cup final. But are you thinking someone else could be taken off the roster that way?
Yeah, I think there is a chance that Travis Hamonic gets the buyout. It's unfortunate, very similar to kind of the Michael Del Zotto incident here. His role was wildly diminished in one season, from one season to the next. And it just seems like this regime doesn't have those plans for Travis Hamonic, kind of like the last regime did. Now, mind you, I feel like they could also just bury this without using a buyout and having to extend the contract, or just keep him on as a 7th defenseman. I don't know what they're going to do, but that's likely where I would point. And then Ross, you got to look at Josh Norris. It's interesting. He's in the final year of where it can be a 1/3 of a buyout rather than 2/3, but his health is going to be the factor whether they can do that or not.
And they won't be able to. You can't buy someone else who's ending the season on LTIR, which
it's ending the season? I thought it was if they're healthy at the buyout time. I could be wrong.
I don't believe so. If someone can
Okay.
correct us in the comments, go ahead. But that's where I'm at with Travis Hamonic too. It just felt like he had this mysterious absence towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
Almost feel like it's a wink, wink, nudge, nudge situation. We'll pay you your money, and maybe we just kind of keep it hush hush. Because if they did buy out Hamonic, it would be a $366,000 cap hit for the next 2 years, other than getting him off the books after this upcoming season. So that's the buyouts. That's the first thing in terms of a checklist, but I don't think it's the most important thing.
No.
We've got the list. We've checked it twice of what the Ottawa Senators could, or dare I say should, do this offseason. And the first one, it's simple.
Yep.
The Ottawa Senators had a favor presented to themselves by Jacques Martin coming behind the bench for the rest of this season at 71 years old, the oldest coach in the National Hockey League. They need to hire their permanent head coach, and I say they have to do it before the NHL draft.
Now, why is the draft such an important deadline for you, Ross?
Well, the draft is only 3 days before free agency, and at that time, just to make the nucleus of the hockey decision-making even more important, the coach has to like who he's putting out on the ice. So I think, of course, some teams take it too far. The Ottawa Senators have been known to just acquire players because there was a connection to the head coach in the previous regime. But I do think there's something to be said for especially bottom six veteran players having not a relationship, but being in the coach's good books or the type of player that the coach is going to utilize. So I think that just from a decision-making standpoint, if you're going to turn around a lot of the bottom of the roster, both on the back end and the coaching, of course, management gets final decision, but I think the coach should be involved in those discussions as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Ross. I kind of feel like for me, the importance on the coaching decision is more towards getting the right guy. Now, I know you're not diminishing having the right guy in, but for me, the deadline of when the coach comes in isn't really that important. Ideally, you'd want him in as soon as possible, get him acclimated, have him, well, whether he brings his assistants with him or the Sens assign assistants, who knows how they're going to do it that way. But I almost feel like if you're the Senators, you have to kind of have a situation where you don't cater that relationship between the coach and the players as much as other teams do, or as much as the Sens have in the past. I almost feel like you got to be like, hey, we're going to give you a team we think can win, and you got to make the most of it. Not necessarily we're going to cater to what we think works best for you or what doesn't work best for you, because that can be a great strategy. And I think most teams and franchises want to do that. But then you get in a situation where you build this roster around a coaching style and a coaching personality, and you fire the coach a year later, and then you've got to rejig things all over again. So I think for the Senators, where they are right now, that might not be the correct approach. That's just my opinion, though.
The carousel's already turning, and in one case, Marty St. Louis ain't getting off. The Habs have used their 2-year option on Martin St. Louis. No surprise there, but it comes on the heels of another division rival, the Buffalo Sabres, firing their bench boss, Don Granato, after 4 or 5 years. He was right before COVID, so he was one of the longer-serving NHL head coaches. The turnover at that position is just astounding at the NHL level right now, but there's 6 teams, and we think that number could be growing.
Yep.
There's teams that sometimes make decisions after the first round of the playoffs. Sometimes Barry Trotz will win the Stanley Cup and then take free agency and move on as an NHL head coach. He did that from Washington, moving on to the New York Islanders. But I think that this is the main area where Steve Staios can put a stamp on the team. Jacques Martin going back to a advisory role, and he's going to play a huge part in hiring the head coach. So we will cover extensively who the candidates are and why some would be good or bad, but this is an overlook, and that is the most important thing for the Senators this offseason.
Yeah, and I think most people will agree with us there, Ross. Obviously, the only reason you make a list is so people can get mad at it. So get mad at our list. You're welcome to do that. But Ross, this is a question we can get into bigger, but just as a quick discussion, do you believe that the new head coach should have say of who his assistants are going to be, or that the Ottawa Senators should handpick the assistants?
If anything, the Senators should pick one of them.
Okay.
Other than that, I think it's on the coach to bring in his assistants, whoever he feels comfortable working with day in, day out. But we often do see times where organizations will pick one guy as kind of their voice on the bench, or, just making sure the message from management gets through. Obviously, the head coach is busy with his own things in day to day. So if there's those back channels that need to be had, it's a slippery slope, I guess, in terms of a power dynamic.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know firsthand, but I do think that you should have the head coach pick his own assistants. I'm more worried about getting the right head coach, especially as the marketplace continues to flood. Who knows whether LA is going to keep their interim head coach right now. So there's going to be some jobs out there.
But Ross, when your team that's had the abysmal special team stats on both sides, penalty killing and power play, that might be a moment where you're like, all right, like you mentioned, have the head coach bring along one of your guys that you work well with, that you two believe in each other. But we are going to find, I don't care if you like the guy or not, we're going to find a penalty killing specialist. We're going to find a power play specialist, because the special teams being at the bottom of the league in both categories simply is not acceptable.
You can add special teams into that head coach, because you're right. That's one of the most underperforming areas this year after being top 10 in both. Like, what happened? They fell apart. The Ottawa Senators did this year on specialty teams. When we come back, still 4 extremely important areas the Sens need to improve this offseason. We will continue to discuss that next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. We love Game Time, and we're not just saying that. Ross and I have used Game Time on multiple occasions for our road trip in Winnipeg and Minnesota. We use Game Time. We love the Game Time app, and you will too. They're now the authorized ticket marketplace of MLB. So for baseball, you got to use Game Time with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I mean, playoffs are around the corner. If you want to get ready for playoffs, especially if there's teams playing near you, Ross, you're probably going to be checking out Game Time to check out some Jets Avalanche games, because Game Time is the ultimate ticketing app. We love the flash deals. We love the zone deals, so you can choose a section and let Game Time choose your seats. The all-in pricing is clutch. Hate getting to checkout when you think you got a deal and then $100 is tagged on at the end. Seat views, you get panoramic view from your seat, so you make sure the logo's facing the right way. The right price guarantee, lowest price guarantee means Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and so much more. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
Today's episode is also brought to you by the Glebe Central Pub, right in the heart of the Glebe, right by 2nd Street on Bank. It is the Glebe Central Pub. You can find them at 779 Bank Street, and let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. It's our bar that we love to have fun at every time we are in Ottawa. They take good care of you at the Glebe Central Pub. They want to make sure you're well entertained while you're eating good food and great drinks. You have to enjoy, whether it's the dartboard, the TVs, or every Saturday at the Glebe Central Pub, you can go get some live music into you. Tonight, Wednesday, go here. They've got open mic night. They've got trivia on Tuesday, tacos on Monday, or wing night on Monday. I should say tacos is Thursday, but as you can just tell, there is always something going on at the Glebe Central Pub. So go visit them today. Have a pint. Get the Yorkshire puddings. Absolutely delicious. Get the wings. I'm a big maple hot guy, but get whatever gets you going at Glebe Central Pub. So go check them out. It's the neighborhood pub right in the heart of the Glebe. The vibes are free at the GCP. Visit them, Glebe Central Pub, and let them know that Locked On Senators sent you. All right, Pillsy, before we get back to our important priority list for the Ottawa Senators offseason, stick taps are in order to Brady Tkachuk.
Yep.
Brady Tkachuk, the captain of the Ottawa Senators, has been named their nominee for the King Clancy Memorial Trophy.
Yep. No one more deserving on this team than Brady Tkachuk, in my opinion. Just so everyone's clear, here's the definition of the King Clancy Memorial Trophy. It's awarded to the player who best exemplifies leadership qualities on and off the ice and has made a noteworthy humanitarian contribution in his community. I mean, Brady Tkachuk checks the boxes all over that definition, Ross? Like, you talk about leadership qualities on the ice. We could go on for days about him. He's probably the guy who showed the most passion and the most kind of drive towards the end of the season. Another meaningless season, but Brady's still out there setting hit records, tying franchise records in shots. Like, he's trying out there and then sticking on the ice, Ross. We were there to witness in person, the home closer. Every other player, no problem to them. It's all good. They come out, give the jersey, shake hands, and they're off the ice. That's fine. That's all you need to do. Brady Tkachuk, the captain, he comes out last, and he's on the ice for half an hour, not only talking to the people that got his jerseys, but everyone else on the ice that waited around for him. People were chanting Brady. 45 minutes after the game, he had his name chanted. So that's incredible. And Ross, obviously, his work with the Boys and Girls Club in the Ottawa area needs to be noted as well.
And this is not the first time that Brady Tkachuk has been nominated. He was nominated back in 2020 as well as last year. Now, every team gets a nominee, and then they're able to shake it down to just one. And he would, if he gets to win, as you mentioned, very well deserving. He would be the second Senator to get the honors after Daniel Alfredson won it in 2012 with the pesky Sens. Off the ice, Brady Tkachuk and his wife Emma are huge parts of the initiative Tkachuk's Captains at the Boys and Girls Club in Ottawa, where he gets to go enjoy some time with the kids, help them financially as well. And they also brought out the Brady Burger, which is available at the Canadian Tire Center. So proceeds for that
I didn't
go
try
to the
it.
Boys and Girls
I'm
Club.
just learning about it now. Like, I wish I would have gotten to try it.
Yeah, maybe next year. They've also got the T7 clothing line that you can go. Again, all proceeds of that, portion of the proceeds, go to Tkachuk's Captains Initiative. So a Senator for life, as I said. Shout out to Brady Tkachuk. The Senators need to do a better job of getting him some help on the ice, which brings us to number 2 on our off-season checklist. Number 1 is hiring a permanent head coach. Pillsy and I differ a little bit on what the timing should look like on that. And now, number 2, figure out the goaltending situation. Pillsy, has it ever been harder to be a goalie-friendly show than this year?
I mean, we almost have to change the hashtag. Like, it's very difficult to be goalie-friendly show this season when you have 2 of the worst goalies statistically in the entire league. Ross, I don't know the answer to this solution. Like with the head coach, I've got an idea what I want and how they should do it. But for the goaltending, obviously, I feel like most fans are just like, oh, just go out and trade for the best goalie and sign him for 8 years. Obviously, like, yes, sweet. That'd be so cool if it was easy like that, but it's just not. And the Ottawa Senators, Steve Staios, put in a tough situation with the free agent signing goalie that has not worked out at all, that has 4 years left on his deal. And then your safety net in Forsberg, he didn't work out great this year either. So, like, they certainly can't come back with both of those guys. They probably need to get rid of one of them and maybe even pull the New Jersey Devils move and go scorched earth and just get rid of both your goalies and start fresh.
On TSN during Game 82, Steve Staios said that he feels both those goalies are better than they showed, which is a polite way of agreeing with the interviewer when he mentioned that this team had the lowest 5-on-5 save percentage and one of the lowest save percentages in the league against low and medium danger shots. And it passes the eye test in terms of Joonas Korpisalo making unbelievable saves. Forsberg as well, especially for Forsberg. He's made a few amazing glove saves this season. but then they let in some where you just shake your head. And not only does it count on the scoreboard, obviously, but it also counts in the way the team plays in front of you for the rest of the game and beyond, knowing that if one mistake is made, the puck could end up in the back of the net. So just figure it out. Figure it out. That's all I have to say about the goaltending situation. Number 3, sign Shane Pinto. Already a lot of smoke around it. Bruce Garriock saying they've discussed 5-6-year options. 5 makes a ton of sense. He's a unrestricted free agent in 4, so you'd be buying 1 UFA year after that. But most importantly, just sign a deal. Make sure it's not 1. We've done full segments, Pillsy episodes on what the contract could look like, but just get it done. Show Shane Pinto that he's a priority in this organization.
Well, and Ross, not even like just showing face that he's a priority. Shane Pinto kind of is a priority. Like, we've seen it directly with the on-ice product of the last couple of games. Shane Pinto's this team's number 1 center in last night's game. Like, Josh Norris, you never know what his health's going to be. It doesn't take much for his shoulder injury to have him out long-term, unfortunately. And then Tim Stützle, obviously he hasn't had any serious injuries, but you can't put everything on a young guy like that. So you need Shane Pinto to be able to be in the mix, whether he's the third-line center, second-line center for a little bit, or a first-line center out of necessity. So Shane Pinto is so important to this team, and anyone that is involved in the Senators world, fans, scouts, players, everybody, reporters, everybody understands how much better this team is when Shane Pinto's on it.
For more on that, go check out our episode, not even 2 weeks old. So everything still stands with what we said, whether or not Shane Pinto should be extended long-term or short-term. Still 2 more to go on our top 5 most important moves to be made for Steve Staios this offseason. You got some ideas of your own? Make sure to write them in at Sens Central on Twitter, and right below, if you're watching on YouTube, hit us up in the comments. And don't only engage with us here, go and scroll down and read other citizens, what they're saying. Lots of really, really good insight, long thought out responses. So interact with them. That's the beauty here of the Senators community as we are in to the off season. More on the other side, plus the Belleville Senators could clinch a playoff spot. Holy, what a few days are coming up with the baby Sens. That's all next. You're listening to Locked On Senators. It's your team every day.
Today's episode is also brought to you by a new sponsor. New sponsor alert, Ross. Let's go. That's the noise we're going for new sponsor?
Yep.
All right, I like it. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm stoked about this. Our new sponsor is Monopoly Go. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime. Scoreboard's not looking so good. Sens fans, we can relate. You're feeling low, not sure whether you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you gotta dig deep, lift your head up and say to yourself, it's time to get back in the game. Pull off some bank heists. Take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends if you want to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get it back out there. Put your game face on and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Check it out today, guys. Monopoly Go.
All right, Pillsy, here we are into the off season. This is our Wednesday show, a little bit of a later drop here. We are going to really use Twitter. Typically, we'll mention when episodes will be a bit later on in the day, but typically nothing's going to change Monday through Friday. Yep. Your team every day. Friday playoff preview And then we're working on getting some of your favorite recurring guests here on LOSP. We're going to do a 3 or 5 part eulogy of the Ottawa Senators. And then I started the show saying the body wasn't even cold. Pillsy, it's going to be gone. That's it. We wipe our hands with the 2023-24 season, and then we get the wheels turning, and we got lots to get to, even with just these 5 things on our checklist today. But beyond that, the Ottawa Senators, there's plenty of off-season moves I'm sure Michael Andlauer will want to do, whether it's renovations around the training room or whatever the case may be, to really put his stamp on the team now that it's off-season. There's not the day-to-day to worry about having the team there. So I'm excited about what the news will be coming out of Ottawa throughout this offseason. Pills, you want to recap the top 3 and then we'll go into number 4?
Let's do it. So the top priority is hire a permanent head coach before the NHL draft. Number 2, probably the most difficult in my opinion, figure out the goaltending situation. And then number 3, sign RFA Shane Pinto to a contract extension. Do it. Get it done. Come on. And you read number 4.
Number 4, acquire multiple impact two-way veteran players. That is very specific. We've put 4, maybe 3 with a hyphen adjectives to acquire a player. We want one that's impactful, one that's a veteran that's been through the battles, and one that knows how to play on both sides of the puck. I will say to you right now, none of those 3 are non-negotiables.
So each player has to have all 3 of those attributes?
A very specific set of tools.
Got it. I like it. I mean, for sure, right off the top, Ross, we know this team needs more veterans. Claude Giroux does an exceptional job being a veteran leader on this team, and he's the exact guy that the Ottawa Senators needed at the exact right time. So shout out Claude Giroux for sure. But then you look at Hamonic being out of the lineup most nights. Vladimir Tarasenko traded at the deadline. Not a whole lot of other veterans beyond that. Like the rest are all kind of the core drafted and developed guys for this team. So you need guys that have been through the grind, have had the ups and downs of a full season. You need guys with playoff experience, and you need guys that just are going to be able to calm down all of these young players that are going through all these emotions and have all this pressure on them for the Sens right now.
And I would like them to get heavier in the bottom 6 as well. I found that they used to be able to push guys around and at least be an intimidating force on the forecheck. But I find that right now it was just having Dominic Kubalik gone is addition by subtraction.
Big
just
time.
In terms of 4 assists. I mean, Pilsy, that's 4 more than you and I had combined. Like it's not going to cut it, especially like he doesn't have a forechecking element to his game. So he can't, like, just replacing him with someone heavier in the bottom 6 that has some decent skill is going to be paramount for the Ottawa Senators to have some success. And like, I don't really want to like pull out names or whatnot that to like go at, but this is where you have to have good pro scouting for your guys to go get in free agency, not the splashy ones on day one that are going to make it to Sports Center, but the guys who are going to play an everyday role. Like, for example, here's a free agent this summer who probably doesn't get a lot of love, but when he played Ottawa, that Kiefer Sherwood kid in Nashville, he was heavy. He was strong on pucks. Like, I'm just trying to show that it doesn't have to be a name guy. I would actually prefer if it's not, but a guy who comes
he's not a veteran.
Well, he's what, 26 now, 27?
If you say that Sherwood
he's
kid,
29.
He's not okay.
Played almost 200 games. So yeah, this is like
I'm just checking you. You said all of these are non-negotiable, and then the first player you mentioned was a kid.
Yeah, well, he's 29. That's basically the Jake Lucchini kid comment. I would like one guy to be like, someone who your older brother who stopped watching hockey 5 years ago would still actually know.
Okay, let's have that as a non-negotiable as well. Your older brother has to know this guy.
Except poor concept though, because that's where Travis Hamonic would have probably fit in.
Oh yeah, he would have played. Well, but that's the thing, Ross. Like, Travis Hamonic is the right idea of a player you're looking for, just not the right execution there.
like, would you be happy if they brought in Brendan Dillon in the offseason? We obviously hear a lot about Dylan DeMello because of the natural connection, but let's say DeMello stays, right shot defenseman, obviously a priority. But if you're moving out one of Chychrun or Shabbat, like, would that be a guy you look at? He's a left shot D, and I don't think he would come to Ottawa, but in terms of like age, experience, and style of play.
Yeah, definitely. Those are the types. Now, yeah, the left shot D, maybe that doesn't play because I'm expecting Clevin to at least make a push to be that third pair left defenseman. But yeah, that's exactly the idea, Ross. Like, basically, the way I would describe it is I want someone that's been in the NHL long enough to know they have job security and they're not going to be playing panicked. They're not going to be forcing things. They're not going to be focused on scoring goals and setting up highlights. I want a guy that has gone in to the corner to retrieve a puck that's dumped in thousands of times, and that's not an issue for him. I want a guy that can chip it off the glass and out. I want a guy that has good gap control, like a guy that does all the little things that aren't praised. He just does them right every time, and it's built into him like muscle memory. Like, that's the kind of players that I want on this team that are going to be able to ease everything and allow the talented, creative, offensive players that the Sens have to do their thing while they are responsible and make sure all the other details are taken care of. That's what I'm looking for here.
There's names out there that would be available potentially, and I shouldn't say available by trade because I don't know if they are, but the names, remember at the deadline, Braden Shen's name randomly came up briefly, and Boone Jenner's name. These are like big, responsible centermen, guys who you can trust in all situations. I wonder that if he gets to UFA, if Adam Henrique would be a guy who they looked at on a 1 or 2 year contract. So those are the types of players. Obviously, if they're able to move a big money contract and figure out the goaltending and sign Shane Pinto, lots of ands, and there's still some money left over if they do move a bigger salary, like Marchessault would be a really good fit in terms of leadership and everything. And Vegas has kind of squeezed themselves into a situation where they can't keep everyone. But I think if anything, we could see Marchessault go to the Habs, just, French Canadian, finishes his career in Quebec. And so I'm not selling myself on that. And if he goes to Habs, he's a diver, and I didn't want him anyway. So that's all I have to say about that. So let us know, are you in agreement so far? What are you banging the desk right now saying the fifth thing has to be this? Well, we're going with the NHL draft. The Ottawa Senators, by every single outlet, have a bottom barrel pool of prospects. So the situation is not great right now. They have, however, 2 first-round picks, an early second-round pick, a trio of fourth-round picks. They need to swing and make moves. They have low floor, low ceiling guys right now. And I know the expression is high floor, low ceiling. I know that, but they have low floor, low ceiling guys right now, mostly. Mostly because there's actually like the Disher is doing his thing up here. We obviously know Tyler Cleven's making good progress. The Stapchuk got NHL games. Roby Arventi, bit of a wild card after a long injury. He looked like he'd taken a step. Pettersson, Crookshank's older, right? They've got prospects, but like they need that like 18, 19-year-old because the last 3 drafts, they've basically said, no, we're good. We hit a home run in 2020 and we're just going to coast from there. So they need to restock that baby now.
Yeah, our friend over at The Athletic, Scott Wheeler, ranked the Ottawa Senators prospect pipeline 31st out of 32. The only worst team was the New York Islanders. And you may be thinking, well, this is a team that's trying to build towards the playoffs. So they're using draft capital to get closer. That's all well and good. Scott Wheeler's top prospect pool rankings, the Buffalo Sabres and the Detroit Red Wings. They're supposed to be in the same spots as us, yet they're closer to the playoffs. Detroit missed the playoffs by 1 point, and Detroit has miles ahead, way better prospect pipeline. So the Sens, they got to figure that out, and I'm hoping, Ross, that their top pick is going to be someone that can be an impact in the NHL either right away or within 1 year, and then the other first rounder that they get is going to be a guy that at least you can see a lot of potential with, regardless of what his timeline to the NHL will be. And Ross, I don't know how you feel about this. I'm not opposed to trading down to try to collect a little more draft capital if the Sens find an opportune time to do that.
Yeah, I'm never against adding more picks. I wouldn't go any further down than their quadrant of picks. They actually have the 4, right? Forgot they added another one in the Tarasenko trade. So yeah, they're going to have 3 picks. They're going to have 3 picks in the top 40, and then they're going to have a long time where they don't pick. So yeah, if you want to move back there, I would almost prefer to take 2 of those fourths and move up at least into the 3rd if there's a player that's dropping on their board. But they'll have some time to figure it out here. They've got some capital to work with, at least, whether they want to trade up or down, because that Bruins pick at the end of the 1st round, that could be a valuable asset. And also those early seconds, those typically get a lot of calls.
Yeah,
we know Ottawa's made
that's
moves
the one I was
past.
targeting, Ross. Yep.
Because a player falls out of the 1st round, everybody's scrambling, saying, I need to get my guy that I can tell my owner I got us an extra 1st round pick that just so happened to slide out. Kind of like how Rod Brindamore didn't get swept last year. He's a 1st round pick. No, he is. Yeah, he got drafted 40th, but he's a 1st round pick.
Yeah, when the NHL expands to 40 teams, we can call 40th overall 1st rounder.
Funny enough, Shane Pinto, I wonder if he'll use that argument this summer. He was 32nd overall.
Yeah.
And obviously now there's 32 teams. I like these 5, Pillsy. I think if the Ottawa Senators do all 5 of these things, and of course then it will hinge on whether or not we like the coach that comes in. I have a feeling we will.
I hope so.
Then I can start getting cautiously optimistic, because I'm not there yet. I'm very down in the dumps real about what we saw this season. Just not good enough consistently, and another failure at the start of the season. Maybe the subheading after number 1 would be that the head coach that they implement has to get rid of the country club atmosphere in training camp. Like I need training camp to be as serious as it can. You hear about Casey Middlestat, and I saw it come up when Buffalo fired the Don Granato, because everyone loved Don Granato. Seemed like a really good guy, good coach, been in the league as an assistant for a while before getting the job. Casey Middlestat, after 2 practices in Colorado, said he was shocked by how hard they work in practice. Now, part of that is the culture that the players build. Definitely. And Nathan McKinnon's certainly a guy who takes everything seriously. So it's on the players. Well, it's on the players, but it's also on the head coach to set the tone day 1 of training camp. They have to know that a poor November is not an option. It just isn't. So these are the 5 things we believe will help Ottawa get there. I wonder how many people are like, guys, can you, like, Steve Staios has been staring at me for like half hour right now.
Yeah, those eyes are intense. We can move on from that, but yeah, I do think that we nailed it with our list. As always, get mad at a list, go for it. But Ross, where one season ends, another season may extend, as the Belleville Senators have a massive game tonight, as Wednesday is typically a very busy night in the AHL. The Belleville Senators have a crucial game up against the Syracuse Crunch tonight, and this could impact how the weekend looks for the Belleville Senators, where they played Laval back-to-back games.
Yeah, it really can. And this is a later recording, so we won't go into, the details of things that can change. But what you do need to know is how important this game is. As it stands right now, with 3 games remaining, the Belleville Senators have a 2-point lead over Laval. So they need 2 points, but then they get into a tiebreaker situation. So they can't clinch tonight, but they can come so close that they would only need 1 point on the weekend, because both of the games that the team trailing are playing are against Belleville. Laval needs to beat Belleville twice. So this weekend's going to be amazing for that theater, but Belleville can do themselves a huge solid and just beat Syracuse tonight at home.
Yeah, Ross, I really don't want a Belleville loss here and then it all to come on the games up against Laval. I just feel I don't got a good feeling about that. So I just want them to take care of business, make things easier on themselves for the weekend.
Final thoughts on today's show, Pilsy.
Final thoughts for me is I just want to reiterate again. I know we talked about it on the postcast, and Ross, you tweeted out the clip, so I won't get too in depth, but it really does mean a lot to us that people are still tuning in. People are still invested in what we're doing. People are getting excited about the draft coverage we're going to have. And look, it's a relief that the season is finally over. We're ready to turn the page. I know a lot of you guys are ready to turn the page as well. So we're ramping up the vibes. We're ramping up the hope. We're ramping up. We're going to give you as much content and knowledge about how this offseason can go as possible, whether it's the coaching search, the draft, free agents, trades, whatever. We got you covered. So I want to thank everyone again for being there, right there with us, because we couldn't do it without you guys.
I echo everything Pilsy's saying there. And we're also going to bring on some of our friends from Locked On throughout the summer and see how their teams, like I'm thinking of the Vancouver Canucks, is like the blueprint where they had good players. They wanted to make some changes. Obviously, the head coach did a lot in terms of changing the culture, and they got some saves. But I think that listening to how other teams were able to turn it around, maybe that can help us go into next season. But Pilsy nailed it. Everything that the citizens bring to the table keeps the engine rolling, and we can't thank you guys enough here at Locked On Senators. We will be back again tomorrow. We are recording at 2:00. Of note, it is garbage cleanout day for the Ottawa Senators Thursday, tomorrow. So there'll be plenty of content all over Sensland. Jacques Martin speaks at 1:00. We will be recording just after that. So we'll have a reaction to Jacques Martin's end of the year press conference. And then on Friday, we will be recording in the morning as Steve Staios is set to speak at 10:30 a.m. on Friday. So plenty of reaction to the end of season coverage this week. And then next week, we'll catch up with some of our favorites here on LOSP. But for today, we say goodbye. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.